Hello everybody. In this video I am going to be teaching each of you how to be a Kali Linux administrator. We're going to go through all the steps on how to properly manage and use your Kali Linux operating system. Now this works whether you're in a virtual machine or whether you're booting from a USB or if it's already installed on your computer system or you installed it on your computer system like I have done here in this video. So let's go ahead and take a look around Kali Linux. First over here on our left, this comes standard with your Kali Linux download. You get your Firefox browser, your terminal, which is the core of the entire operating system. It interacts directly with the shell and the kernel. You got your file system, much like Windows file systems, but set up a little bit fancier. Looks prettier. Then we got Metasploit Framework. We're going to be using this extensively when it comes to learning penetration testing and ethical hacking. We got Armitage, which is basically just a graphical user interface of Metasploit, or GUI, if you will. Then we got Burp Suite. We have Maltego. We got Beef cross-site scripting framework. We got Faraday IDE. We got LeafPad, which is the equivalent of Notepad on Windows. Then we have our settings and we have show applications. Now what I want to really take a look at real quick is applications tab up in the far left corner of your operating system. Here each program is broken down into the phases of what a hack should look like. First, we gather information using multiple different tools such as Nmap, Zenmap, NetDiscover, and all the rest here. We can gather different information such as what type of operating system our target is running, our DNS domain name service that a website may be running, as well as basic network protocols and ports open on these devices. Then we go to vulnerability analysis. So here again we can use Nmap, we can use Nick2, Linus, Galismero, Sparta is a good one, and then Unix privilege. So in vulnerability analysis, we're looking for an open hole to attack our system, whether it be over the network or through a backdoor that may have already been installed there, or some sort of way into the system. Then we get web application analysis. So this is more focused on servers as well as your websites and different web platforms and things of that nature. We got databases as well that we can look into. We also got database assessment, which is more for database obviously, but some of this is can be used for the same thing. Then we get password attacks. So if you guys remember my password cracking video where we cracked an MD5 hash, there's a program called John the Ripper and multiple other programs to crack passwords. Then we got our wireless attacks. This is probably one of my favorites. This is where you can hack Bluetooth devices, or most specifically Wi-Fi. I have performed a couple of Wi-Fi hacks, and all I can say is that it is amazing once you get into the network what you can do with that network. Then there's reverse engineering. We got exploitation tools, which this is where we actually send viruses and injections and different scripts to attack and control our target system. We got sniffing and spoofing. Again, this is more of a network security area, but very, very relevant to performing a hack, especially if you're doing it over a wide area network. or across the wire, as some of us call it. The most famous one is Wireshark. I will have a Wireshark course and tutorial coming out soon. We got post exploitation. So after we perform a hack, we don't want to just get in the system, drop a virus, and then say screw it. We want to try to maintain access to that system. Therefore, we are going to be using backdoors and remote access tools and things of that nature. Forensics, this is more of a defender side. This shows the tracks of an attacker and how to um, kind of backtrack where they came from and what they did to the system, the extent of the damage. Then reporting tools. Every ethical hacker has to use reporting tools, otherwise they could get into some serious trouble. So basically you have to record everything you did to the system that you were targeting. Social engineering, this is using the power of words, as well as spoofing and things of that nature. And then you got your standard system services and usual applications as well. Okay, so the next thing that I want to go over with each of you very briefly is the Linux terminal. The Linux terminal is basically like the Windows command line on steroids. It has the power to control everything from the kernel all the way to a simple individual folder or file. Your terminal is going to be your best friend whenever you are operating a Kali Linux machine or operating system. And so therefore it doesn't matter whether you're in a virtual machine or you have it installed on your computer or you're booting from a USB or CD. Your Linux terminal is the key to Linux. So understanding how to operate the Linux terminal, even at the very basic level, will help ease the difficulty of Linux. So the very first thing we can do with our Linux terminal is we can change a couple of different things. Let's go to colors under our preferences, and we can change the color of the text so that way it's a little bit easier on our eyes and looks a little bit cooler. So I'm actually going to go with, I'm going to do red, and we're going to go over here, select, and then the background of the terminal, we can make it a green. So select, and then we can make it more transparent so it's kind of like a darker, and we can also see in case we have programs running in the background that we need to look at while entering our commands. Excuse me. So the cursor color, we need to do both in yellow, and there we go. We don't need to, you can make it whatever you want, but I'm choosing yellow. And then we just close out, and now you can see that we've made changes to our terminal. Now, the very first thing that you should do every single time that you boot into Kali Linux is you should type in the command apt get update and press enter. Remember that Kali Linux and any Linux terminal and Unix terminal is case sensitive. Now, whether that is the truth with the Windows command line interface, I'm honestly unsure. I've never paid attention, but I do know for a fact that the Linux terminal is case sensitive, so be sure that you're using all lower cases unless you're specifying something specific that specifically requires a uppercase letter. So what just happened? Whenever we do an apt get update, it retrieves certain files and sources and packages and libraries from the Kali Linux and Debian archive database. So the creators of the Linux operating system, of this specific Linux operating system, they usually like to update things, after a short amount of time, or patch things. And this is also true for apt-get upgrade. Now, whenever we do an apt-get upgrade, this actually can physically change the operating system rather than just sending small bits and pieces of little packages and things. So, apt-get upgrade, this could, if they released a new version of Kali Linux, it could boot you into the new version of Kali Linux. So I went from a 2018.1 to the 18.2 to the point .3 and now point .4. I'm not sure if any more has been released just yet, but if you hit this and run this command, it'll boot you into the next and reconfigure everything for the better usually. There's some bugs that I know that 2018.4, the Firefox wasn't working very well on the 64-bit version, but it was working fine on the 32-bit version. At least that's what some of the forums were saying. So anyways, whenever you run the apt-get upgrade command, do understand that if you do not do this every single time that you boot into Kali Linux, it could take a half hour or more in order to complete this command. So I'm not gonna do that at the moment, but do know that every time you get in, you should do an apt-get update and an apt-get upgrade. So in order to clear our Linux terminal screen, we just type in clear. I know in Windows it's CLS, but in Linux and Unix it is clear. So now, how do we get from our root system, which I will go ahead and explain further down the road, all the different file hierarchy and all that fun stuff, the actual administration stuff, but just know that root is the super user, the owner of the entire system, okay, the head administrator. If you are not root, and usually you can tell because you're not going to have a hashtag, you're actually going to have a $sign. So what you would do is sudo apt-get and then install the program or update or upgrade, and then once you run that command and you're not the super user, then you are going to have to type in your password. So it's highly important to recognize the difference between the administrator and just a user on the system. So now going from root to a different system within our root directory, we would do a cd or change directory, and let's say desktop, that I want to go into my desktop. So what did that do? So we're familiar with the desktop folder in Windows. Well, we also have a desktop folder and file in here. Therefore, all we did was go through the terminal into our desktop folder. And then if you want to see what you have within that desktop folder, you type in ls and you hit enter. Now, I have nothing in my desktop. This is a very bare bone setup right now, just to teach each of you the basics. But so now if we need to understand the path of our desktop, we can do a print working directory. And as you can see, we got /root/desktop with a capital D, because that is the way that it is set up in our file system. Okay, in order to get out of our desktop file system here, all we need to do is do cd, and we change out. So clear screen. Now if you would like to make a file of your own, or a folder of your own, or directory I should say, specifically, you should try to make a directory of your own. We could just do cd desktop, and then what we want to do is mkdir, or make directory, and we can call this no, let's call this hacks. Okay, now we've made that directory, and we can now see ls, and we see our hacks within our directory. So let's go back out, clear. Now, in order to go back to your, let's say that we go into a directory, ls, then we want to cd into hacks, maybe, there we go, and ls, there's no contents within desktop / hacks, but what we can do is clear, and to go back to our original root system, let's first do print working directory just so each of you see this. But going back to our root directory, cd, and clear. Okay, now let's figure out one last trick for each of you, a very important one. Within Windows, you do an IP config in order to figure out your IP address. But obviously, within Kali Linux or Linux and Unix, you can't do an IP config because it is ifconfig, and then you bring up all that information, and you see your inet and blah blah blah. You know, figuring out your IP address essentially is what you're trying to do. So that is what you do in order to figure out which is your address. Okay, alright guys, so that's the basics. Hopefully this helps you navigate Linux a little bit more. I am going to be coming out with a more detailed Kali Linux tutorial, especially working on the terminal, but I kind of just wanted each of you to understand a little bit of the differences between Windows and Linux, and just working your way around some of the most rudimentary commands and applications within Kali Linux. So thank you guys for watching. I've been highly surprised by how many subscribers I've gained over those first 3 videos. That was incredibly amazing. So I will see each of you in the next tutorial.